What's up, everybody? Thank you so much for listening to Your Ex-Drinking Buddy. My name is Brennan Tassif. I'll be your host. Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Check out the merch store at brennantcomedy.com/merch-store. And make sure you subscribe on YouTube as well. We'll put the shorts up there, the full video, the whole thing. Thank you so much for listening. I love it. I hope you love it. Subscribe on Patreon, too. We do bonus episodes. I do Tales from the Restaurant, where I talk about celebrities I've waited on and whether they're assholes or not, which is super fun. Also, we do a pre-show banter for my other show, Cheers from the Press Box with Joe Dorville. A lot of behind-the-scenes stuff going on over there, too. Make sure you just subscribe everywhere, just all over the place. I greatly appreciate it. And if you're not leaving the mean comments, thank you for that. Maybe leave a couple nice ones.
Grab me a beer and grab him a coke. We bout to sit for an hour, bullshit and tell jokes. And please don't mix it up, cause he done sobered up. Brennan T Comedy on your social media feeds. And Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into another edition of Brennan Tassif is your ex-drinking buddy. I'm your host, Brennan Tassif. If you're new to the program, quick rundown of the show. I used to be everyone's favorite drinking buddy. It was my favorite thing to do. Hang out with friends, get drunk, do drugs, get in all sorts of trouble, and then reminisce about those crazy stories. I am sober now, but it's still one of my favorite things to do. Hang out with somebody and reminisce about the crazy old days. Most weeks I'll be joined by a guest. This week is no exception. All the way from New York City, Che Durena.
How are we doing? We're doing good?
What's up, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Yeah.
Before we get into anything, plug everything up front. Any podcasts that you have, shows coming up. This will come out next week, so let everybody know.
You can come check out my podcast, Dark Holes with Che Durena. It streams on all platforms. We're going to be in...
Which is a fantastic...
Dark Holes, pretty good name.
I did a little research before you came on, and I was like, this is a great idea.
Yeah, it's like I wanted... Because there's so many clip podcasts. Yeah. I was like, I just want... to give it a little bit more of an identity. So it's like the dark holes I fell into while like doom scrolling, and we separate it. We have the 3 C's of dark holes. We have culture, so something that's like going on in the culture. And then we have like a character, so some like weird internet personality I found. Yeah. And then comments, which is usually secrets, like write-ins that people send in.
Okay.
So those are the 3 C's of dark holes. Gives you an idea of what we do. And then, I'm on tour right now. I got some Kentucky stuff, some Toronto stuff, some Oklahoma stuff all coming up pretty soon. So if you're in any of those states. Yes, Bricktown.
Hell yeah. Shout out to Bricktown. I spent some time in Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah. Bricktown rules, dude. Go to chedurena.com for all that stuff. You can join the mailing list at Punch Up Live. Yeah,
beautiful.
Yeah.
Dude, I appreciate you coming on. So you had told me that you're hitting a bunch of podcasts, which is super smart. Because as someone who's newer to New York, I've only been here for a few years. I feel like I can only reach out to like my friends who have podcasts, and then it's like, oh well, if they're busy, it's just like you're shit out of luck.
Yeah,
and you're like, no, I'm persistent, man. I'm just shooting shots.
The Toronto style of getting booked. So I came up in the Toronto comedy
Yeah, because
scene.
I want to get into that. Yeah, so you're from Canada originally.
Yes, I grew up maybe like an hour outside of Vancouver.
Okay,
but almost all my comedy time was in Toronto. I was in Toronto for 8 or 9 years doing stand-up.
Okay. Is that when you started, you immediately went to Toronto?
I started in Mexico. I was living in Mexico. Yeah. I was living in Mexico for 3 years, and the last year and a half.
What brought you to Mexico?
I was a scuba diving instructor.
Really?
Yeah.
We're gonna peel this onion all the way back.
Oh yeah, I guess one time I did go teach a scuba diving course. I don't think I was teaching. I think I was just guiding that day. But
what's the difference?
So teaching is like you don't know how to dive, and I am like showing you. Okay, we do this, and we go through the course.
It makes as soon as you said that, it clicked in my head. Yeah.
A guiding is just like you're already certified, and I'm just taking you.
Yeah. Hey, look over there. Look over here.
Exactly.
Yeah, got it.
And I showed up after a night of doing ecstasy.
We're gonna get right into it.
Yeah, dude. I did ecstasy all night, didn't sleep. I remember I was trying to bang this Norwegian chick, and she was like kind of stringing me along all night. She was like, she was really like just wanted the attention.
Yeah.
And
have you ever heard of such a thing?
Yeah. And she like we went back to her hostel, and then she was like, "Oh yeah, come, like, oh, we're gonna go to the beach," and like everything was like, "Oh, we're gonna go here, and then we're going back to my place. We're gonna go here, and then we're going back to my place." And she just brought me to all these different places. Yeah. And I followed along. I was like, I don't know, I was probably like 19 or 20.
But
And
how did you even find stand up to try it while you were in Mexico?
so my brother started doing stand up in Vancouver.
Okay.
And I had just consumed a ton of stand up.
Yeah. So how did, because I always ask this, and it's something that we always gloss over because it's our life.
Yeah.
But because it is such a niche thing, and I
Yeah.
say it all the time, the listeners are sick of hearing it. But like I work at a swanky steakhouse, and sometimes I'll get guests that come in and they ask, "Oh, what brought you to New York?" And I say comedy, and they go, "Oh, we love it. Our favorite comic is Dave Chappelle or Robin Williams."
Yeah.
And I'll be like, "Oh, mine's Bill Burr or Tom Segura or Matt
Yeah.
Fulchiron," and they're like, "Who?"
Who? Yeah.
And I go, "You don't love comedy."
Yeah.
So it is a niche thing. So how did
Yeah.
you even find it? Because you're younger than me. I assume
Yeah.
it was scrolling or something like that.
No, it was Comedy Central.
Oh,
Comedy
really?
Central, yeah.
Shout out to the OG.
Yeah, Comedy Central just would play comedy specials all the
Yep.
time, and I would just consume them like crazy.
So
Like,
you found like you liked it from the start.
Yeah. I would just, I remember like Chris Rock was the guy back then. I would just
Yeah.
watch Chris Rock specials over and over. Then whoever else's specials were on. I watched so many comedy specials I can't even really remember them.
Same. Yeah. I used to record them on VHS.
Oh, really?
Every
Yeah.
Friday at 11 o'clock, the Comedy
Yeah.
Central Presents would come on, and I'd
Yeah.
record it on VHS and rewatch it.
And we also had a Canadian version, which was Comedy Now. So you
Okay.
would get to like showcase some really great Canadian comics. There's still some jokes I remember. Like Rob Pugh is a super hilarious Canadian comic, and he had this joke about crossing the border and how they make you fill out that form.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like, "Are you a terrorist?" It's like what they're gonna be like. Well, I don't want to lie. Like I remember that.
I'm not allowed in Canada. I've never been.
No?
No.
Oh, well, you got DUIs?
Couple,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're really strict on
They're
the
super
DUIs.
strict about it.
Yeah, I don't know why, but I've heard that like
I
hundreds
spoke
of
to a
times.
Canadian lawyer through some weird circumstances. We ended up on the same Zoom call.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, "Oh, it's easy. All you have to do is wait 5 years after you're finished with all of your probation and everything.
Yeah.
Then write a letter to the magistrate and then pay $5,000. Super easy." And
What's this
I
$5,000?
was like, "That doesn't sound easy at all."
Yeah. It's like, why do I need to wait? What's this? Like, the $5,000 doesn't make me more responsible.
I know.
Like, what the fuck? That's crazy, dude.
Because I had Josh Adam Myers on, and he was talking about when he did Montreal.
Yeah.
And it was like a big deal because
Yeah.
they were like, "Don't worry about it." And he was like, "I'm kind of worried about it."
Yeah,
and Kyle
yeah.
Kinane talks about it too, where he's like, "We'll just roll the dice.
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
see
yeah.
what happens."
Yeah.
So you're coming up as a kid. You love stand up, but
Yeah.
you didn't try it in. I'm assuming you didn't try it in high school.
No, but I did public speaking.
Okay.
So I would do speeches and they would be comedic.
Okay.
And so I would get laughs doing that. And that was kind of like my first taste.
Yeah.
And then I never really thought about doing stand up. Even I remember, I think it was my mom was like, maybe you should try stand up. And I would, but the concept for me, because all you see on TV is like famous people.
Yeah.
So I just assumed it was like a byproduct of fame.
Yeah.
So you're like, all these people come to see you because you're famous, and then you do stand up.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we still see that sometimes in our industry now, where
Yeah,
it's a person is famous, and then they're like, "Oh, I'll parlay this into stand up."
I thought that was the process.
Okay.
I didn't realize it was the inverse.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
it's definitely the inverse, because when you see those people, a lot of times you're like, "Ooh,
Yeah.
stick to the podcast."
Yeah, dude. And but then I kind of forgot about it. I was in Mexico. My brother started doing stand up, and that's when it clicked, because he was like, "I'm doing stand up," and I was like, what do you
Younger or older?
older.
Okay.
And I was like, "What do you mean?"
Funnier or not as funny?
Yeah,
as
he's
you?
funny. He's very
Okay.
funny. He doesn't do it anymore. He's kid life.
Yeah,
he's got a
yeah,
lot of
yeah.
shit going on.
Chose
But-
the path of happiness.
yeah.
But that
But
is an interesting thing, because I am very competitive. So like I've talked about this before, but like I played football my whole life. But when I first started playing football, I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I was like, because I was short. I didn't hit my growth spurt till much later in life. And it was
Yeah.
one of those things where it's like, well, my older brother did it.
Yeah.
My dad did it. So it's like, I'm going to do it. Whether I
yeah.
like it or not, I'm going to do it. So I didn't know if there was that competitive mentality with you where you're like,
No.
oh, he can do it. I can do it too. Watch
No,
this.
it wasn't that. What it was just the realization that
The
you
barrier
just
of entry,
go to
yeah.
an open mic.
Yep.
I was like, I thought you like. He said I'm doing stand up. I literally said I thought you have to be famous.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he was like, no, you just go to an open mic. And so then I just started going to, like, there was a small group of dudes. It was like 4 dudes. It was like 3 Canadians, 1 American.
In Mexico.
In Mexico, who were doing a show once a week at this bar. And I just started going there.
Okay.
And yeah,
Shit.
and
How was the first time?
I remember it going well.
Okay.
I'm sure if I went back and watched it, it would be fucking horrible.
But when we're that new, all you need is that couple of laughs, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay.
I was like, all right, and I thought like, okay, it was like kind of the first thing I felt like very passionate about,
Yeah.
and like I drive for. So I was like, all right, let's like see if I can keep doing this, and then I got to the point where I was like, I'm thinking about jokes all the time, I'm writing all the time, and like I was really obsessed in it.
Yeah.
And then when the time came where I was like, oh, I want to pursue this, and this like once a week doing shows here in Mexico isn't really going to go anywhere. I got to go to a big scene.
Yeah.
Biggest scene in Canada at the time was Toronto. I don't know post-COVID how everything has shaken out,
Yeah.
but
we used to have a big scene in Jacksonville, Florida, where I'm
Yeah.
from, and it's been rough lately.
Yeah?
A couple of the bars have closed or sold, and
Yeah.
because even though it's years after the pandemic, it's just one of those things where it has a reverberating effect. And then a lot of people picked up in like between Orlando, Daytona, and Jacksonville. A lot of people left.
Yeah, there's if you're in that South Florida circuit, there's a lot of stage time.
Yeah.
A lot of stage time.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of guys and men and women that stayed, and they're still running shows and doing the thing. But people, like me, where it's like, oh, I've been back at it for a few years. Like I think I started in 09. I've been back at it for a while. Like I'm gonna go. There's a lot of people who do that. It's like a brain drain in these smaller cities. So at the time, Toronto, that was the spot.
Toronto was the spot, and so I was like, well, I want to go there. So then I sold my scuba diving gear, flew to Toronto, and then just started grinding the grindstone there.
Okay. And then how long have you been in New York?
2 years, 2 and a bit.
Okay.
Yeah, it was 2 years in August. So it's like,
happy 2 years.
Yeah.
It was 3 in July for me.
Right on. Awesome.
Yeah. So when I wanted to ask you, because before we get too far down the rabbit hole of like the chronological order, why Mexico?
It was the cheapest flight and the best paying job.
Okay.
Yeah,
So let's go through this. So are you graduating high school and you're just trying to figure out what to do, or like how did you end up doing that?
So I graduated high school, and then my parents were like, you have to go straight to university. Because I had no drive for anything, I very much was like as a teenager.
I don't want.
I didn't care about nothing.
How were your grades? You had good grades? Bad
grades.
grades. Were you an athlete? Did you play any sports?
I boxed and I played football, but that wasn't really going to take me anywhere. I had kind of left. Boxing was what I was better at, and I had left it. I'd just been partying and drinking. And then football, I stopped in grade. I did grade 9 and 10. I didn't go and do the senior years of football, which was probably good for my brain.
Yeah, trust me.
Yeah.
Every time I drop my keys, I go, fuck.
Yeah. And so there was like not a lot of directions for me.
So what university did you apply to? A bunch of schools? Were you like excited to like go party in college, or were your parents just like, no, this is what you're doing?
You have to have to do something. And so I just went and looked online I didn't want to do anything. I was like, I don't want to go to. I hate school. I don't want to keep going to school. None of these courses interest me.
And now I'm going to pay to do it.
Yeah, it's like, what the fuck is this? And then I found a scuba diving instructor course through a college.
Okay.
And so then I applied for that. I got into that. I remember I don't even think they kept asking me like, send us your report card or your grades and I was like, yeah. And I don't think I ever did. And I just kind of weaseled my way into
That's
this
a dirty
thing.
little secret. There's a lot of times where I thought, especially with my addiction issues and stuff, I thought I had to get a real job. So I would just send out resumes and stuff but like my transcripts were dog shit.
Yeah.
But I would just send out my resume and they'll be like, yeah, well, look at your. They never look. They never look.
Yeah.
My older sister told me one time, she was like, when I first got out of college, I applied to 10 places.
Yeah.
9 of them didn't. One place checked to get her transcripts.
Yeah. And so
I was like, oh, so you could just lie.
You just lie, dude. You can just lie. And so I just lied my way into this course, and I'd never scuba dived before. I started learning scuba diving.
This is the elephant in the room. Being from Florida, there's a lot of scuba diving. I've taken classes. You're in Canada.
Yeah.
What's going on?
So the cold water diving in British Columbia is actually some of the nicest cold water diving.
Is it really? See, I'm not trying to throw shade or anything like that. I think icy water, very cold.
Oh yeah.
Why would you scuba dive?
Dry suit, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like, so, but it's very beautiful. It's very beautiful. So we would go diving and see like these giant Pacific octopus. I saw this thing, a lion's mane jellyfish.
Yeah,
it was so big,
huge.
I couldn't put my arm. Like if I wouldn't be able to. If I was hugging it, I wouldn't reach around.
Yeah,
it.
they have one of those at the Met, hanging on the ceiling.
Oh, really?
Or not the Met. I'm sorry, at the American Museum of Natural History.
Yeah, and
they've got that little aquatic animal section.
Yeah.
And there's one on the ceiling, and it's like
the
huge.
Tentacles probably went for like 30 feet or more.
Yeah, it's gigantic.
It was. There's a lot of like you're not gonna see coral and shit, but you're gonna see some pretty magnificent creatures that
whales.
like.
Do you see whales?
I never saw whales,
God,
and a few of my friends went diving with well, what were they? Sea lions, but I didn't go that day. I think I was doing my driver's test that day because I was younger.
Yeah.
So I was like, I still hadn't got my license. I was like, I gotta get this license.
But the not the jellyfish, the octopus, that's gotta be crazy.
Yeah, the octopus is very cool. I never saw one out of its hole, but you go and you see it in its little thing.
Yeah.
Those things get huge. I think the largest one on record's like 600 pounds or something.
Jeez.
That's like a freak of nature kind of one, but they do get quite large.
Were you scared?
No, my mom was very afraid of water.
Yeah.
So she made sure that all of us kids were in swimming lessons from a very early age.
Immersion therapy.
Yeah, like I think I was even in those, like, you know, when they drop the kid into water
Yeah.
type train. I think I was in that shit.
That's how my mom taught us how to swim.
Yeah, yeah.
She would throw us in and go swim to the side.
Yeah.
Swim to the side.
So I when I was a kid, when I was like 10, 11, I would like go up to the rec center and just swim for the day.
Yeah.
Like my parents would give me whatever was like $4 to go swim, and I would go there, put my stuff in the locker, and then just
I would
play
just
around
be
in the
more
pool all
concerned
day.
about the wildlife.
No, there's nothing too crazy out there, and I've never been like, I don't know, the most stuff in the water isn't trying to kill you.
Yeah.
It's not like crocs and shit. Like
Yeah,
crocs.
yeah. When we grow up in Florida, it's like there's alligators in every standing
Yeah.
body of water. There's sharks in the ocean.
Yeah.
And like, you know, you talk to surfers and they're like, statistically speaking, there's a shark like every 4 feet when you're in the water, and you're
Yeah.
like, I don't want to go then.
Yeah, and we did shark dives in Mexico. We would go dive with the bull sharks, and I never felt threatened or anything.
Wow.
With them. Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, they just kind of swim around you and check you out and then take off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's very cool. It's exhilarating. Yeah.
How long did you do you did the course?
Yeah.
How long did you do diving in Canada before you're like, all right, I'm going to Mexico?
So it was the 2 semesters. So it was like 8 months.
Oh, so it's like a legit class.
Yeah.
You're
I
like,
don't know if they still have the course, but it was legit, and did the whole thing. And then I went home for about a month. And I kind of had that first taste of like freedom of not living at home, and I was like, I gotta get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
And so I just started
Cheapest
applying. Cheapest flight, best paying job.
That's
I
crazy.
applied everywhere. I think my 2 offers, I had an offer to work in Mexico, and then I also had an offer to work in Tonga, and then I also had an offer to work in Turks and Caicos.
Okay.
And I was like, let's go with this
Yeah.
Mexico one.
So when you get to Mexico, is it a culture shock being from Canada?
A little bit, yeah. I was like, I've always been very just kind of like young and dumb with my approach to exploring new things. I never really
Very
stressed.
Matthew McConaughey of you.
Oh yeah,
That's his whole book Green Lights is about like, let's just go.
You just go.
We'll figure it out later.
You figure it out. So like I knew the place I was working, they were like, we give you accommodations for the first month, I think, and then you have to find your own place. So I knew when I landed, I was gonna have money, I was gonna have a place and a job, and I think I had like $700, and so I got there and I was like, all right, well, we'll make it work.
Yeah.
And then just go buy some tacos and eat and go to work and learn how to run this shit. And
Are you fluent in Spanish?
no, not at all. yeah. My Spanish, muy poquito. Yeah, pretty shit right now.
I know it's funny because I can say, like, one of the things I know how to say is La idioma de español mi segundo idioma, which is Spanish is my second language.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of the only things I know how to say. So
Yeah.
in the restaurant, I'll have tables that come in, and they'll be like, oh, you speak Spanish. And I'm like, that's actually all I know how to say.
Dude, have you ever seen that episode of Family Guy where Brian's in the back of the truck and he's talking to the Mexican guy and he's like, it's not actually mi amo es Brian, it's mi amo Brian. You don't need the S. And he goes, oh my God, you speak English? He's like, no, I just speak that one sentence and this sentence explaining it. And then he's like, what? And he goes, ¿qué? And he's like, that is so funny. That scene is so funny, dude.
I never even put 2 and 2 together. Yeah, like I learned how to say Spanish is my second language just so I could. I think I learned it originally so I could sound cool in front of a Spanish hostess at the Outback I was working at in Florida. And like just to get on her good side, I learned how to say Spanish is my second language. But all I know is restaurant Spanish, like my table, like can you make me this, like that kind of stuff. So when you get down there, are you, because you said you had the first taste of being from home, and you said you did like to party in high school. Are you like, all right, like lock and load, here we go?
Yeah, I did cocaine for the first time
Oh,
out
really?
there. I did acid for the first time out there. I had a few really bad acid trips.
When was the first time you tried acid? How old were you?
I think I was 19. It was New Year's. And I remember my friend told me it was just a bad like drug Sherpa, basically. Like you need, if you're gonna do drugs, guys, get a good Sherpa who's
Absolutely.
gonna teach you kind of how to do things properly. So I was with a friend of mine. I would teach scuba diving, and then I would go work at this little shop that like sold tours and stuff, and try to make a little extra scratch selling tours. And she was super cool. She was this Mexican chick, and she's like, oh yeah, I do acid all the time. And she would just like fucking trip out and do all this shit. And she's like, yeah, acid's like a party drug. And I was like, sick, dude. Acid's a party drug? Let's fucking go, dude.
It's not.
No, it's not. It's like a heavy.
It's absolutely not.
No, it's a psychedelic experience, and that it's good to be very comfortable while you're doing it. You like environment, your feelings, emotions, all these things are very important. And at that point in my life, I was like hyper insecure, hyper uncomfortable. There's a lot of like,
I never did psychedelics because of my extreme anxiety.
okay, exactly.
People are like, "Oh, you have to be in the right headspace," and I was like, "I don't even know I don't even know what that neighborhood looks like."
So it was but that being said, we'll get to this later. Psychedelics helped me get over a lot of my anxieties. But this
is the first time you're doing acid too.
This is the first time I'm doing acid. So I meet up with my friend. She gives me the acid, and she goes, I'll meet you at this bar that you're going to later. It was a bar where a bunch of scuba divers all congregated, and another friend was supposed to come bring me ecstasy.
Okay.
And so I was like, all right, I'm going to do this acid, and then I'm going to do ecstasy, which I know, and ecstasy makes you feel good. It's all going to be good. So I go, I eat this acid. I'm at this bar with some people I know there, some people I don't. The acid's kicking in, and I'm having an experience of being now confronting like a bunch of anxieties, a bunch of discomforts, and being like very out of my element and so uncomfortable that the tension, like my back is physically hurting.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm so tense.
Yeah.
And then I need something to get me out of this. So I was like, okay, what's next to ecstasy? Cocaine. Mm-hmm. So I start doing cocaine while on acid.
This is a disaster.
And then I
don't mean to laugh, but this is like, I understand the thought process 1,000%.
And for anyone at home who goes, what an idiot. I've never experienced acid. I'm in a country I don't know.
Yeah.
I've kind of been left behind by these people who said
You're
they were going to guide me.
trusting the person who,
Yeah, and I'm 19. I'm a kid. It's not even legal drinking age in America. I'm Canadian, so we can drink in Canada at 19. And so I'm like freaking out and doing more coke and freaking out and doing more coke and just like heightening these anxieties.
Not realizing that it's
paranoia.
Playing into the other.
And then when I crash from that,
real quick, because I love these little details. How long do you stay at the bar?
I still well after midnight. I think,
is everyone around you like, what's going on with Che? Or
I think I was just so insular. I was like having panic and freakouts just all inside of me. I wasn't sharing this with anyone.
I was always like that too.
Yeah,
like people would always joke that I would get loud, and they're like people who didn't know me would be like, "Oh, Brennan's wasted," and my friends would be like, "No, he's not."
Yeah.
And then when I would be sitting on the couch, just like by myself watching TV, they go, "Now he is."
Now he's wasted. Yeah.
Because I get super like shut down.
Yeah, I'm gonna shut down. Yeah. So I think I was just kind of shut down. I was maybe talking to a few people at the bar, and I remember I was just texting my friend who was supposed to bring me the ecstasy over and over because I'm like panicking now.
Yeah.
Like I need this drug, that the one drug I know. I'd maybe done coke one time before that, but I'm like, I know how ecstasy makes me feel. I need this.
Yeah, I need to get out of here.
I need to get out of here. And so I'm like panicking and freaking out and probably having weird conversations with people. And then eventually when I crash from all this, I go home and I'm still high off the acid, but now in a like a psychological dip from not being high on coke anymore. And
because it crushes your dopamine.
And I become like the most depressed I've ever felt.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was a horrible experience. I remember being like so unbelievably sad and feeling like and I've never had depression before.
Yeah.
And this is the only time I've ever felt like real depression. And I just felt like crushed, and I was thinking about anytime I'd ever wronged a person or anything I'd ever done wrong in my life, and I felt like worthless.
Things you said, things you did.
And I felt like that for a few days.
For a few days.
It took, I think it was definitely over a week. Like it was probably 3 days of like this day was the worst, and then it was maybe by day 3 I was at like a manageable level of this horrible depression, and then it was probably over a week before I was like, wow, that sucks, never doing that again. That was the worst combination of drugs I've ever felt in my life.
That's just the, as you're describing it, like that. Like my palms are sweating, like I'm getting anxiety, because I've been in the situations where I, like, again, always steer clear of psychedelics just because of the way my brain works, and I was always just worried about it. But I have had a lot of people on this show talk about like how mushrooms have helped them with that kind of stuff and things like that. But I remember like going on benders where you're doing cocaine and you're drinking for like 4 or 5 days straight, and your dopamine is so tapped out that for days I would just lay in bed and like listen to podcasts, and I'm like, I'm getting up to get water or Gatorade, and that's so I don't die, and that's it. And like just not coming out of bed for like 2 or 3 days. And so that, like, on an even higher level because of the acid, oh my god,
it was horrible. It was horrible, dude.
So so this sounds like a party group. When did you do the Norwegian girl?
Oh, this is the Norwegian girl's way later.
Wait, so you were down there, you said 3.5 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, 3 years.
3 years?
Yeah,
okay. So is this like a lifestyle then? Like you guys are partying at night and then doing tours during the day? Because you're underwater. Like it is kind of like, I mean, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but it is kind of a life or death situation that you're going into every day.
Yeah, there's people who get really hurt doing it, and the level of irresponsibility that was being thrown around by a lot of diving instructors, and myself included, was shocking. I think I've said this on other podcasts. Don't dive with someone young. Don't dive with someone too fun. Dive with like the sort of anal,
the nerd,
annoying, nerd. The best dive instructor in our dive agency, I can't remember his name, but he was an ex-Marine, and he was like so not
nerd. That guy's not a nerd.
But he was just clinical about everything he did, and everything was ultra safe, and he would teach everyone so perfectly how to do everything perfectly.
Because I can imagine being like a young kid who's having fun. There's stuff that you forget because it's so second nature to you.
Yeah.
It's like back in the 80s when the pilots would like party all night and then just be like, all right, let's go fly this plane.
Yeah.
And because they don't think about it, but then something goes wrong and you're like, fuck.
Yeah, and I never had any accidents, but I know some people that did. There was, I think I just talked about this the other day, that there was 2 or 3 videographers that just went missing.
What?
Yeah, they it was kind of common for the videographer to swim away from the group just to get some footage and stuff like that, and they just never came back.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I remember there was 3 people who died in the cenotes, which are like it's like the underwater caves. And so there's 2 types of cave diving. There's cavern and cave. Cave is zero visibility. There's no light coming in, so the only light you're getting is off your like your lights that you bring with you. And in order to be a cave diver, you have to do a very psychologically intense course.
I could imagine.
Where they do stuff like you go into a cave and they take off your mask and they kick up soot and they reduce the visibility to 0, and you have your lines getting out, and on the lines you'll put these, like, they look like S's, but they're little sort of trinkets, I guess, that when you touch them, you put your unique sort of markings into them. So by feel, you can guide yourself out. You go, okay, I put it on this one, and this line leads out.
So it's almost like a Braille exit sign.
Yes, yeah. And so when you're doing the course, they'll do things like fucking take off your mask, kick up soot, like maybe you have one of your lights is low, and then they'll remove or move around your thing. So when you get to you'll get to a point where there's like 5 lines that go into different directions, and
you
you're
have
like,
to feel.
Yeah, and you have to remember, okay, it was like the 3rd line from the left because I can't trust my little Trinky guy because he's not there or been moved.
Oh my gosh.
It's
I watch
never
those
did it.
like cave, not diving, but like the cave videos that you see
where they're like, I'm in the Junka Munka.
Yeah, and
cave.
you're like, why?
I don't know.
Why? And to do that underwater? Get the fuck out of here.
It was something I was never
That's what a robot is for.
Yeah. But they loved it. They loved it, and I think there is like a thrill-seeking element to
Yeah.
it. But in order to lead the cavern dives, you have to be cave certified. So you can be a regular diver and go into the caverns. The
Yeah.
caverns have natural light. So
Yeah,
it's
I was going to
much
say
less,
those are the wide open ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have the springs and stuff like that back home where it's
Yeah.
like just 100 feet deep, just and you're like, whoa.
But there was a guide and two, I guess, tourists that went and they got to a certain point and he took them off the line to see like, oh, there's some cool like stalactite formation or something. I don't know what his motivation was.
And just got lost.
Never got back. They never came back. They had to retrieve their bodies out of the cenote.
Terrifying.
Yeah. One dude, I remember this was, I mean, I didn't look too deep into this, but the rumor around the diving community.
There's got to be a ton of those floating around, like
yeah.
rumors, like you hear about.
Yeah, but that was one of the people died of a heart attack, that they didn't suffocate.
Okay.
Because you start, when the realization kicks in that you're running out of air and you don't know how to get out, then that's some dude fucking croaked.
Jeez.
Yeah.
So how, because you said you were down there for 3 years. How was like were you just doing this thing where you were, because you said you found stand-up down there. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming there was an itch to do something else while you were diving. But as a 19-year-old in Mexico, are you just like, this is my life now? Like, this is what I'm doing?
It was moving to Mexico and scuba diving was more of like a means to an end.
Okay.
It was just like, well, it gets me out of my house. My upbringing wasn't like fucked or something, but it was just I had like overbearing parents and I just wanted some freedom.
Yeah.
And so I got out and I now had this freedom that I wanted, and I just could kind of explore that.
How long were you down there before you did the mic?
I would say 1.5 to 2 years. It
Okay.
was somewhere in that range. I think it was, I can't remember when I moved down there. I'm pretty sure it was in the summertime, but I think it was December of 2014 or 13
Okay.
that no. It must have been December of 2012. Yeah, I think it was December of 2012.
Okay.
Because I moved to Toronto in 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, it was December of 2012 that I did like my first time going on stage.
So what happens with Mexico? Is it like your contract's up, or like you just told them like, hey, I'm gonna get out of here? Like,
So, I mean, a bunch of things happened. So I was working at the dive center. I stopped doing that. I started working for a call center because I just was like, it's very physical labor.
Yeah.
I wasn't that into it.
oh, so you didn't do diving the whole time you were down there?
No, the last year
okay.
I didn't. The last year I did a call center and I bartended like back to back, and that's where I was actually making the best money.
Yeah.
Um,
People tell me all the time, you're gonna have to quit your restaurant job if you want to like do this. And
Yeah.
I was like, I moved to New York. Like I'm making the effort, and also I can make my rent in a weekend. So
There you go.
I don't think I'm gonna quit my restaurant job.
The thing I've always said, like this a sidebar, the thing I've always said about that is like, because I worked service for a long time. I eventually quit service to when I was projecting more into stand up. I took a pay cut for it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, well, I'm just doing stand up. No, I got a job that was like stand up adjacent.
Yeah.
That was entertainment adjacent in that field. So I was like, everything I was doing all day was now feeding towards my career.
Yeah, and that's
Yeah.
super smart, and that's one of the things I love about the restaurant I'm at, because it's right in between the stand and the cellar.
Mm-hmm.
So like I have regulars that are huge comics.
Yeah.
And like I meet entertainment people all the time.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, yeah, I'm working at a restaurant, but also I've gotten to perform at the cellar because of working there.
Yeah.
I've gotten shows because of working there. Like
That's how you want to like position
I'm now friends
yourself.
with some huge comics
Yeah.
because of working there. It
Yeah.
had nothing to do with going to mics and like doing these produced shows my friends have. So I'm like, it'd be one thing if I was working at a restaurant and it was all finance bros and like I was getting like nothing creative out of
Yeah.
it. But it's like actually,
Yeah.
and on our Patreon for the show, we do a Tales from the Restaurant where I talk about whether celebrities that come in are cool or they're assholes. I get
Yeah.
to meet Bill fucking Murray, man.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
so it's like one of those things where it does feed into that creative side. But for you, doing the call center, bartending, and then doing the show once a week, you kind of, as you mentioned earlier, you were kind of like, oh no, like I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna do stand up.
Yeah. When I really started to enjoy the stand up, I was like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do with my life. And then shout out to Dave. I can't remember his last name, but
Shout out Dave.
Shout out Dave, dude. This guy was very much like he's the closest thing I've ever had to like a mentor. We both worked at the call center together. He used to be like a big, I think he sold like timeshares and real estate and all this stuff. He used to be really big in that world. And then he got had a bad drinking problem, and I think he split up with his wife and stuff, and things fell apart for him a little bit. But he was a very smart man. And he introduced me to a bunch of stuff. Like, he got me on a huge health kick. Like, I didn't even know what coconut oil was before him. And he's like, yeah, it has a medium branch chain amino acids. He introduced me to people like Rob Wolf, who's like a big raw foodist guy. I'm not a raw foodist, but just the concept of like micronutrients and spirulina and all these things.
What you put in your body actually matters, that kind of.
I started eating like cacao and these, which you could buy raw cacao in Mexico. You could get like 2 kilos for like $5. It was fucking awesome, dude. Yeah. And like a maca root and all these different things that I started to treat my body better, my life better. And he was a very like spiritual person too. I'm not super spiritual. Some of his stuff was a little too heady for me, but he was like, sometimes things just come to you. And he was so smart too. Like, I told him I wanted to do stand up, and when I kind of rolled the idea of moving to Toronto, I was like, yeah, I'll go for a few years, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And he went home and he watched a bunch of comedy, and then he came back and we were talking about it. And he was like, yeah, that's not how it works. Yeah. He goes, either, and he just watched this for a day. I'm maybe a year into stand up at this point, and I don't get this. I get this now. Yeah. But he said, you either are or you are not a comic. These aren't people who like do this as a job. This is their life and they're who they are.
I say it all the time on this show. There are comedians, and then there are people who do comedy. Yeah. There's a huge chasm between the two. Yeah. And it's funny because people in my family are all professionals, and I'm 36. Like, I'm no spring chicken, but because of my arrests and jail time and hospitals and my addiction problem, it took me a while to like get into doing stand up full time. Yeah. Like, I do, a couple open mics, then take a break for 6 months, and then do a couple of shows, and then take a break for a year. Yeah. So in 2018, when I finally got sober, like for real, I got back into stand up and I went full bore. And everyone in my family is like, you have to have a plan B. Like, what's your plan B? And I always said, because this was the thing. Like, I found the thing. And people will live their whole lives and never find the thing that they are like passionate about, like what they want to do. And I always say, it's a line I heard, I think, from a movie, but it's like, if you have a plan B, you never had a plan A. Yeah. And so I've lived my whole life like that. Like, my girlfriend now, we go to visit her parents, and sometimes her grandma's like, well, you can still go back to law school, because I was pre-law and I'm a pretty, decently smart guy. Yeah. I'm always like, no. No, yeah, that's not. This is what I'm doing. Yeah. This is it.
And it just
and so Dave figured that out after watching stand up for one night. He was just like, you either are or aren't.
Which I was like, when I look back at how like he just understood things really well. And I remember when I was like, I don't know how I'm gonna go, and he went, if I was you, I'd just sell all my shit and go, just everything you own. And I was like, bro, I own a blender. Dude, like, I have nothing to sell. And
that's classic. I love it too when people are like, just pay for this, and you're like, what?
And we used to have coffee in the morning before, because the call center eventually let a bunch of people go. They eventually got shut down, and so we started working at the same thing, selling tours on the street. And so we would have coffee in the morning before we would go to this tour job, and he would just would talk about what's going on and blah blah. And he said that to me, and I went, I only have this blender. And then I remember that night, like, I clicked in my head. I was like, you have all this scuba diving gear. Yeah. You could sell your scuba diving gear.
And it's your gear.
It's my gear. Yeah. I can sell the scuba diving gear. And I remember looking up the sky and just saying thank you. Like, it felt like such a profound moment of like realization of like, and also like a tangibility of, I can do this. Yeah. This can get done.
This gear's not cheap.
Yeah. And so let's go. Sold it all. I got ripped off, but I was like, whatever. I don't care.
Because
I'm not. It was like, I'm done with this side of my life.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. As someone who like, I've always been bad with money. Even in my sobriety, I've been bad with money. But that's the same thing moving to New York. It was like, okay, how much do I have to get to? Yeah. So it doesn't matter. Like, we were selling stuff in our old house. Like, we were just selling it for like pennies on the dollar, because it was like, we just need to hit this number. Yeah. I don't care how we get there. We just need to hit this number,
and then we can go.
And then we were gone.
And so I just sold that, got ripped off, but I had enough for a plane ticket, and I had an option. I could have flown back to Vancouver.
Canada's big. How far is where you're from?
From Toronto? Yeah. Like 5 hour, 4.5 hour
so
flight.
It's not,
yeah. So
flight?
Yeah.
Oh, they're on opposite sides, aren't they?
It's LA, New York.
Yeah.
So I could have flown back to Vancouver, and I was like, I could go move back in with my dad and live with my dad, and then like try the stand-up thing over there. But I knew I was very self-aware of this like taste of inspiration that I had. I was had drive for the first time ever in my life, but everything prior to that was very lazy and apathetic towards everything. And the guys who would sell the tour stuff with me and Dave, they were all like listening to Tony Robbins and getting jacked up. So I had like a little bit of a mentality of like how to chase something and how to motivate yourself. So I knew if I went back home, I would have been lazy and stayed on my dad's
fleeting.
couch.
That feeling is fleeting. We say it all the time in the sober circles I run in, where people, when they have that inspiration of like, I'm gonna change, I want to get sober, that's fleeting. Like that will leave you. So if you don't act on it immediately, it's the same thing with anything. You, like you said, you were like, no, I got to do it.
I got it.
And if you went back to Vancouver, you would have been like, maybe next year.
I would have been so fucking lazy with it. And so I just went to Toronto and I had no money. By the time I got to downtown Toronto, I had $25.
Did you know anybody?
No, knew nobody. But something super weird happened, dude. So I knew one comic, not personally, but of one comic.
Yeah.
His name is Trix. And because he had a TV show called Video on Trial and all this stuff that was big in Canada, where they would like play, it was a bunch of comics and they'd play music videos and then they would all like roast the music video. A good concept for a show.
It's reaction videos now.
Yes. Yeah. And so I knew of him, and there was
It's like moving to LA and being like, I know of Sebastian Maniscalco.
Yeah. And there was one other comic who I knew of because one of the comics I was doing stand up with in Mexico was from Toronto.
Okay.
And he told me about this guy.
So you had a connection at least.
No,
but through a friend of a friend of a friend kind of thing?
They didn't.
Oh, really?
It's just, it was this guy, Mark DeBonis. I knew, but no, there's no connection.
Wow.
But I get off the bus with my bag of shit. I have like my scuba bag that's filled with my clothes and shit. And I stop at this hostel because I was like, maybe I can afford one night at a hostel. It's summer in Toronto. I can do one night here. I can kind of figure my shit out. And then I don't know, maybe I'll sleep on the streets or something.
Yeah.
That was the plan. And I go to the hostel.
My guy's doing it, man.
Yeah. I go to the hostel and they're like, hey, sorry. It's like I had like 25 and it was 35. And I was like, oh, shit. All right. And I leave. And then outside is Trix and Mark DeBonis.
Get the fuck out
There
of
was
here.
a comedy show in the basement of the hostel. And so I just go, oh my God, you're Trix. You're to Mark DeBonis. I go, oh, I just moved here to do stand up. And Trix was nice, and he just said, hey man, you know, like if you need anything, let me know. Blah blah. And Mark DeBonis
Actually,
too.
funny you should say that.
I know, but I didn't say this to them. I just like, oh, I got nowhere to go. I just was like, what the fuck? The only two comedians I know of in Toronto are standing right in front of me.
That's nuts.
So weird, dude.
Did you look up at this guy and say thank you again? Because that's like very much.
I didn't at this point, but later in the same night. So I go to a Starbucks and I had a little shitty laptop. I Googled Toronto homeless shelters. And I find a youth shelter, which is close by. And the difference between a youth shelter and a homeless shelter is like a men's homeless shelter is like it's like grown ass dudes who like have a bunch of psychological issues who are homeless.
Yeah.
The youth shelter is like usually kids who like got kicked out of their house or their parents have a lot of problems and they have nowhere to go. And that is like, I think I was 22 at this time. So this is 16 to 24. You can go to the youth shelter. Yeah. So I go to the youth shelter and I have my bag of shit and I come in and they're like, hey, you're looking for a place to stay. They go, we're really sorry, but we don't have any beds. So we'll give you a meal and you can sit down, you can eat, we'll give you a meal to go, and then we'll connect you with a men's shelter and you can go over there. And I was like, okay. And I was like, fuck, that's going to be like bed bugs and all this shit.
Prison.
And like,
yeah,
it's going to be kind of fucked up. And I was like, fuck. But I was like, I got no options. And then one of the people who was staying there, he walks in and he's wasted. And so they have a zero tolerance policy on any substance use.
Yeah, I used to bring meetings into a lot of those kind of places. Yeah, they're very strict about.
So they were like, hey, they're like, you can't stay here tonight. You know, you're not supposed to be drunk. And so he couldn't get a bed, and I got a bed.
Damn.
Yeah, just like that. And I was like, get the fuck out, dude. Get the fuck out.
This is like like serendipity all over and over and over.
It's such a fucking crazy thing, dude. That like this thing happened, then this thing happened, then this thing happened.
That's why I love doing this show, because it's so interesting to hear how people end up like where they are.
Yeah.
So once you have the bed, it's your bed.
It's my bed. And they're like, as long as you don't fuck up, it's your bed.
Yeah.
And so they were like, well, why'd you come here? And I'm like, well, you know, I'm from I was
chase a dream.
I had told them, I was like, I came here to do stand up, and they were, I guess they saw that I didn't have the same situation as a lot of the other kids where it was like a horrible upbringing and all this kind of stuff. They were like, this guy's got it a little bit more together. We can give him a little more trust than we give some of the other people. So I told them what I was doing, and they're like, okay, well, as long as you come here and you start looking for a job immediately and you try to like get up on your feet. I was like, oh, I'm doing the stand-up thing. They're like, okay, we'll let you. I can't remember when this happened, but fairly quickly into me staying there, they would let me break curfew to do open mics.
Okay.
And so I was going out and doing open mics at night. And
because they
back.
know you don't want to be there. Like, you're going to try everything you can to get a job and get the hell out of there.
Yeah.
But you just need a place to stay for a little while.
Yeah.
And I'm sure they're aware of that.
Yeah. And so I stayed there for about 6 months. And then
God, that was way longer than I thought you were going to say.
But it's because I had no
Yeah,
job,
you don't know anybody.
And then I think I spent at least it was something like 5 weeks or something like that doing a security guard course so I could get a job that was like consistent. And that's what I did for the first long chunk because I didn't want to do service because all the service jobs were at night and that's gonna fuck up stand-up. So it was like I can do security job during the day or overnights or some shit, which I did for a long time.
Overnights?
For a long time.
Oof, those are rough.
I would do a couple mics. I would do like a 6 and an 8, and then I would go work an 11 o'clock show or work an 11 o'clock shift and stay overnight at this hospital.
Yeah.
And I did that for years, and then I was.
How many days a week are you working?
Probably like 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I ask is because it is very tricky to do. Like, if someone's like, hey, I got a late night show, you're like, fuck.
So at least I was getting some stage.
Yeah, and you're going up at early shows. That's the thing now is like with my situation is my restaurant's very cool about it. And being in New York, there's shows every night.
Yeah.
So it's like I have 3 very specific days off.
Yeah.
And then if I call them and I'm like, hey, are we busy tonight? They're like, no. And then I'll immediately text bookers and be like, hey, I'm free tonight. And then just jump on a show.
Yeah.
So for you, it's the same kind of thing where most shows aren't starting at 10.
Yes.
They're starting at like 7 or 8. So if you're like, hey, can I get up early? They're like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. And so I just had this opportunity to now work and save and do stand up, and I just kept doing that. Eventually, I got back into service. And I started working brunch, which was early mornings, which isn't great for stand up.
Nope. But I did it for a long time.
But it's like I was off at 4 every
day.
And so I could go
counting your cash on your way to the show.
Yeah,
hell
dude,
yeah, man! Don't forget.
That was the best money I started making in the city. And then I was just doing stand up, and I just grinded, dude.
When did you? So you moved out after 6 months. Did you get your own place? Did you move in with friends? Did you make some friends? What happened?
I was there for 6 months, and then I went and stayed in like what was like intermediate housing for 2 months. And that was pretty sick because you could come and go as you pleased, and you had your own room, and it was like it was more freedom. But you still weren't paying rent, which was great. And then they had courses there too, where they were like, "Hey, this is how you get out of like credit card debt. This is some financial stuff." Awesome. And so I could do courses there to like help
God, I wish
educate.
we did stuff like that here.
It was great. And part of the reason why I was like confident in going back to Canada was when I was in Mexico for that last little chunk and I was doing the tour stuff. I was super broke. There was a lot of like spaghetti nights, no sauce, no butter on it. And I was like, but I'm surviving. And so if I can survive in Mexico, I was like, they don't let you die in Canada.
Yeah.
There's a resource. Like if you're dying on the street, they send a guy to come help you.
Oh God, that's great. They won't let you die.
They won't let you die.
No,
dude.
that's true because I've done my fair share of halfway houses and rehabs and stuff, and it's. Thank God I was under 26 and I was still on my dad's insurance because none of that stuff is free.
Yeah.
And it's insane that like it's just some guy's house, but because he got certified and like took a course, he can now charge each individual person like $1,200 a month to share a bedroom with 5 other guys. And you're like, so wait, he's making like $100,000 a month for this house that maybe his mortgage is $800.
Yeah.
But that's how it works in the United States, and it's the healthcare system.
Yeah.
So in Canada, you were just like, I'll be all right.
I was like, I'll be all right.
That is a cool safety net to have, to be like, they're not going to let me.
They're not going to let me die. They're not going to let me die. That's what I knew. I was like, I won't die. And so I just started grinding the stand-up, and then I moved into my first comedy house, which was great. There used to be this one old Portuguese dude. His name was Armando, and he owned like 4 properties that were all kind of shitty rundown townhouses that were in like the heart of Toronto. They were like right downtown, dude, like incredible, like in terms of location. And the rent was dirt cheap because these places were shitholes.
Yeah.
Like when I moved in there's raccoons in the ceiling.
I didn't think they could survive the winter.
Oh, dude, yeah, and there was like you know what those like frozen chicken strips you can like buy.
Yeah, of course.
One of them was like sitting next to the fridge and had like spider webs on it when I moved in, and when I moved out, it was still there.
Oh my god,
yeah, it was just a shit hole, dude. But it was $400 a month,
dude,
and it was a bunch of us living there. I met one of my best friends in the world there. He was a musician, or he is a musician, and we just like would chop it up, and this allowed me to be like, okay, I'm living here. It's cheap. I can go and do stuff.
Around creatives too is a huge thing.
Around creatives,
because you'll be writing and you won't even know it.
Yeah,
and then someone will turn and go like, "That's a bit," or you should do that on stage, and you're like, "Fuck."
Yeah, dude. And so now I was like in this world, and Armando would show up and like scream for Daniel, who was like he'd been there the longest, so he would pay the rent. And then there was this wild thing that happened years after that where Armando died.
Oh.
Armando died, and then his children took over the properties, which were all housed by comics. And they're like, well, we're selling these. These are prime real estate.
This is millions of dollars we're talking about.
Even though these are like teardowns, one of them is worth $800,000.
Yeah, just the location alone is...
And so
God, Armando repping for the crew,
dude,
man.
Armando fucking like bolstered a bunch of comedy careers. I know several comics who, if it wasn't for Armando, would be not where they are right
just
now.
wouldn't have the opportunity.
Yes. So fucking shout out to Armando. Shout out to his wine he would make in the basement that would get you shit faced.
Hell yeah.
He was deaf. Shout out to just being a deaf old Portuguese dude, man. That fucking
I wanted to ask you, speaking of wine in the basement, when you're living at the young man's home, and you like, because you're partying in Mexico, and then you go to Toronto, was it like a weird adjustment to be like, oh, I can't do anything?
No, my last probably... I remember coming back from visiting family, and I did a bunch of, this is when I had just started stand-up, so I went to Vancouver, and my brother's doing stand-up in Vancouver, so he got me on a bunch of shows, and I got the taste of a real comedy scene. I came back to Mexico, and I was like, I'm so done. I'm done.
Okay.
I don't want to do.
So you literally were just like, I'm whatever it takes to be in Toronto, that's what I'm going to do.
I went sober for like 6 months.
Okay.
Before I left.
Yeah.
And that wasn't like, I know I'm going to have to be sober over there. I didn't know that.
Yeah, because you would have no idea.
Exactly. That was just me. Because it's very much it's a tourist town. It's a party place. So I was just tired of it. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
That's a great insight to have, being that young.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I was 22, I started, like, I went to my first meeting.
Yeah.
And I was crying, and I was like, I don't want to live like this, because obviously I'm an alcoholic. My drinking is insane, and it has been for a long time. And then as soon as I got out, I was like, I overreacted. Let's get drunk.
Yeah.
So for you to be like 20, 21, 22 and being like, dude, I'm done with this. Like,
I think it's because I had the thing. I had tasted something that was way better. And it was like getting on stage and chasing this thing and writing new jokes. I tasted something 1,000 times better than getting drunk and fucking strangers. Yeah. I was like, this is what it's about.
Yeah.
And so
that's awesome, man.
Yeah. So then I just was like on it. But okay, after Armando died, this place had been housing comics for like over a decade. Wow. And so the people who were living there were like, we're getting evicted. We're having an eviction party. And generations of comics who had lived there all came to
awesome.
It was crazy, dude. It was so sick.
And how long ago was this?
This was, this would have been like 20. I remember the girl I was dating at the time. So this would have had to have been like 2019.
So you were still not in New York?
No.
When did you move out of the...
That place?
That place,
I was there for not very long, so I probably moved into there in like 2015 sometime. I stayed there for about 6 months. Okay. And then I moved into another house with comics that was like on the other side of town.
But nicer?
But nicer. Yeah. I was there for a couple years, and then I moved into another house with comics, and I was there for a couple years, and then I moved into a place on my own after like I started to get some success in like commercials and social media and stuff like that. Okay. That was during COVID. I moved into a place on my own, because also during COVID rent went fucking yeah. So then getting a place on your own was actually way more affordable.
Yeah, I had a friend my cousin in New York. They ended up getting a place on Park Avenue. Yeah. But it was just because the rent was dirt cheap. As soon as like everything kind of got back to normal, they raised their rent like it went from like a couple thousand to like $6,000. Yeah. And like, all right, cool, we're out. Bye. Yeah. This was fun. Yeah. This was a fun way to live for a little while.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, I wanted to go back to high school, because you said that you stopped playing football going into your senior year or your junior and then senior year, as we would say here in the States. What but you were partying and having fun. Were you
Yeah.
always like a gregarious, charming, like popular kid? Did you have a lot of friends? Like,
I was always I always never had problem making friends. I've
Yeah.
never had an issue meeting people and connecting with people. That's I've always been good at that. But I was getting like blackout drunk every weekend.
when did this start? When did you drink for the first time?
14.
Okay.
And I remember being like, this is good. This is good.
Joe List and I talked about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, this? You guys try this?
Yeah, this is fucking good, dude. And so I just started drinking and partying and drinking and partying. And it wasn't too long after it was like maybe the second or third time I drank. I think actually it was the second time I drank. I made out with a girl at a party.
Oh.
And she ended up being my girlfriend.
Yeah.
And so there was
This is over. Call
dude.
the doctor. We're done.
Yeah, there was a direct. Not until probably like, I want to say maybe it was like a couple years ago. I was able to untangle these two things, but there was a direct connection between pussy and booze.
Yeah.
You drink the booze, the pussy comes.
Yeah.
And so understanding that was even a thing, and then untangling it was like a long process.
Yeah, and because I think about it now, and it's like I love movies, especially like underrated movies or movies a lot of people haven't seen, but like I'm a big movie guy, and Jerry Maguire, which is an older movie, which is why I say a lot of people haven't seen it because it's like 20 years old. But there's a scene where he's like talking about like, man, I was 24 hours ago, man, I was hot. And I always, that's the picture in my head of I would do that first shot and I'm like talking to people and I'm like, let's go. So I appreciate that correlation because in my head, it's like, I'm an extroverted introvert. Like if I don't know you, I won't talk to you.
Yeah.
And so it's hard for me. I'm very good at meeting people. If like, say we're at the stand and everyone's at the table and I see someone I'm friends with, I will sit down. And if they introduce me to everybody, then I'm good. I'm okay. I'm talking. But I won't just cold walk up to someone and be like, hey, I'm Brennan. But when I would drink, man, I was like everyone's best friend. I mean, that's drinking buddy is like how the show came about.
Yeah.
So I can completely appreciate that correlation of like, and same thing with women. Like I could not speak to women, even though I was raised around women and I'm comfortable around women. I would not talk unless someone introduced us. I felt like I was like not allowed to speak to you.
Yeah.
Obviously for, good reason. Like I don't want people like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
So for you, because that correlation obviously is a very powerful thing, especially for a young man. And then you even said in Mexico, you were like getting messed up and like hooking up with people and stuff.
Yeah.
So what was that like the first 6 months when you didn't touch anything in Mexico? Was a part of you thinking like, oh, I want to go do this? Or was that drive for comedy so strong that you're like, I don't even fucking care?
Yeah, I think it was just the drive for comedy. I felt exhausted and a little fed up with the lifestyle of this party lifestyle. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
So when did you start like drinking again? Like when did you start? Because it seems like there's a pretty solid date. Obviously, you couldn't drink when you were at the boys' house. So, like,
I think it was definitely when I moved into that shitty comic house,
Yeah.
and then I was hanging out
Of
with these
course it
people.
was.
Yeah, that's when I started drinking.
when you
again,
get a bunch
for
of
sure.
comics together, they're like,
Yeah.
let's do it.
Yeah, and I never stopped drinking, being like, I'll never drink
Yeah,
again.
of course.
It was just kind of a necessity of like how I was going to make this transfer.
Yeah, in the moment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you first start smoking weed?
Oh, in high school.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think I even realized that I had a bad relationship with it. 'Cause I just get super paranoid.
Yeah,
like I
me too.
get ultra paranoid when I get too high. This is the thing. I worked for a cannabis brand for a long time in Toronto, where we would make cannabis content and stuff for them. And I'd be fine like getting a little high.
You're just like freaking out. And you're like, this is my job. This is my job. This is my job.
On, I think it was 3 separate occasions, I had huge freakouts because, and it was all edible stuff.
Oh, that's the worst because it hits you so much later and you don't know what's going on. And
Even one of them, we did this thing where I don't know if you can do this, but you can bake weed, and when you bake weed, it releases like the THC. That's why when you smoke weed, like if you just eat a flower, you might get a little high, but you're not really gonna feel it. It's because that the chemical reaction happens from the heat.
Yeah.
So if you bake weed to a point where it's crispy and then you sprinkle it on food and then you eat it, you will get fucking cooked. And so we did this thing where we're sprinkling on food. I'm taking bites of food, but I'm spitting every time. I don't swallow a single bite of this
because you know what
stuff,
it's going to do to you.
but I still get I guess it got absorbed through my salivary glands or
Yeah,
something.
a lot of the supplements and stuff I take, you
Yeah.
just put under your tongue.
I got fucking baked, like freaking out at home. And then there was
Did you, real quick, for the shoot, because I'm assuming this is for content.
yeah.
Were you okay? Did you hold it together enough during the shoot?
Yeah, the shoot I was fine, but then it was once I got home, I'm like fully breaking down. And it wasn't this time, but another time I had to eat a bunch of oil because we were putting oil in a bunch of shit, and I was like drinking it in tea, and I didn't really think about it because it was THC or it was CBD oil that had a little bit of THC.
Yeah.
But I guess because I consumed so much of it, I was like fucked. And so I get home and I'm like, I'm pretty fucking high. And so I was like, well, I kind of want to do a workout. I haven't worked out yet today. And I had a kettlebell that I owned. So I was like doing kettlebell swings, and I was swinging and swinging and swinging and swinging. And I was so locked in because I was so high that I felt like I found a new area of my lungs to breathe into. I was like, there's like a deeper section of my lungs that didn't exist that I've now discovered. I'm almost evolving before my very eyes. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Yeah. And that was
Be like, you guys don't know the trick.
so you don't know the trick. You don't know how there's like actually you can unlock more lung. And so
You leveled up right
I leveled
there.
up, dude. I think about it sometimes when I'm doing kettlebell workouts. I go, remember the extra lung. Remember that
Don't
there's
forget.
don't forget to get. I think what it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. It was.
So you get paranoid. You know
Yeah.
it might not be for you.
But it was good money.
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna ask.
It was
Is you,
really
yeah.
good money. It was really good money, and I just like I was the at this point I wasn't working the service job anymore.
Yeah.
I was working for this YouTube channel that got me a lot of reach on social media. Working for this YouTube channel, I was able to get 50,000 followers
That's
on
sick.
Instagram.
That's awesome.
And so that was So I was making
And where are you? Because you have a huge following now. So
Yeah.
where are you at this point in the?
not even haven't even posted on TikTok.
Okay.
We haven't even touched social media in terms of like really trying to make content. I've
Yeah.
had started putting things on Instagram to try and get something going, but this is pre-reels. This is
Yeah.
pre any of that shit.
Yeah.
And so
Oh, I remember those days.
Yeah.
I used to walk around and be like, this is a fad.
Yeah.
You guys are dumb. Because I'm much older than you. Like 2009 is when I started, and
Yeah.
like in 2012 when it came out, if I would have just been posting stuff, but I was like, you guys are idiots. Who would burn their material and put it online?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
now at 36, I'm like, can someone put me on a 5-minute show so I can try out this new bit and post it, please?
Yeah, dude. It's like this is really topical. I gotta get this out.
I have a joke about the I wrote a bit about voting.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got to get on a
yeah,
show
yeah.
now to get this out.
It's gotta get out. It's cooking. It's in the algo, dude.
We don't want to burn it. We got to
Yeah.
take it out now.
Yeah, dude.
So so when you start working for the content creators and stuff, I'm fascinated
Yeah.
by this. You don't have a following already.
No.
So what is this like as a young man who's doing stand-up? Because we've already talked about it, at length. You have a passion for stand-up.
Yeah.
You didn't get into it to be an editor. You didn't get into it to do sketches and skits and all this kind of stuff, which I genuinely appreciate because I'm the same way. So when you start getting this following, are you like, what the fuck?
Well, I got the job with that intention.
Okay.
That was-
Okay. So you knew. You saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My buddy was working there, and he had built up to like 10K followers or something like that, and so that's how I got the job.
Yeah.
And I got this job and quit my other job, knowing that I'm like, this is less money, but it's more in the direction of what I got to go. I got to build this following. I need people to know I do stand up. I need to start
Yeah.
moving in this direction. So it was completely intentional. Like I used to do this thing on the channel because it was a top 10 channel. It's pretty like mindless content, but they had a big reach. But I would do this thing at the end of the video.
A lot of mindless content does.
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah.
Some of these videos, I'm like, that's
blowing up.
Come on, you guys.
Crazy.
You're better than this.
But I would do this thing at the end of the videos where I would be like, hey, I do pet shout outs. Send me in a picture of your pet on Instagram and I'll shout them out on the channel.
So smart.
And so that encouraged people to reach out and follow me and engage with me.
So smart.
And so I was like, oh, fuck
God,
that.
that's genius.
I was like, how do I get these people to
give them a
follow
reason.
Me? Yeah,
give
to
them a
follow
reason.
me on Instagram. So I just the whole reason I was there was to grow on social.
But I mean, 50K. Obviously that's peanuts now. But for you at the time.
It's good base.
Yeah, that's a huge base.
And
yeah.
and there was a ton of people who I didn't follow me, but just recognized me from videos. Some of the videos I did for them did millions of views.
Yeah.
And so that when I started posting on TikTok and stuff, I still have people who come to my comedy shows and go, I remember your most amazing top 10.
Yeah.
And they're like the OG.
I get that with the
Che
Hannah
Durena
Burner
thing.
stuff where I'll run into people and they go, why do you look familiar? And I'll look at them and I'll go, Hannah Burner? And they're like, yeah. And you're like, that's...
Yeah.
But
yeah.
again, no connection, no follow, no affiliation. They'll just happen to be at a stand-up show.
Yeah,
and then they'll be like,
I know you,
yeah.
dude.
And
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah.
So it's like, and
I'm the guy who does this a lot when he's talking. Totally by accident.
We all got our mannerisms,
Yeah.
dude. My buddy told me that a Che Durena stage thing is I do this a lot.
You got to get your point
don't know,
across.
like,
I do this,
Yeah.
which is, it's almost like a...
Nervous tick?
Yeah.
My nervous tick is pulling up my underwear. I reach
Okay.
like this, and I do that a ton. I go like fucking.
I was watching a video, not an old one. It was like from last week.
Yeah.
And I just cannot stop going like this.
Yeah.
And it's going well. And I'm
Yeah.
still just like,
You just have your ticks
yeah.
that you
It's
do.
almost like stay in the moment.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
right here.
Yeah. We all got them. We all got
So you get this following, and
Yeah.
that's awesome because it is one of those things where like all of us know we're one video away from like going from obscurity to like now I have a base, now I have a following. But you've been, and to your point, so persistent. So you get that following because for those of you listening, you're at close to 1 million on Instagram now and stuff like that. So when you get that following, you were just like, well, let's just keep going. Let's just keep going.
keep posting, keep growing. Like I'm a strong believer that people need to see you in like multiple iterations before they kind of attach onto you or want to interact with you. Like I have like a most amazing iteration of me. I have when I worked for Herb and was doing the weed stuff. I have my TikTok stuff. And now some people are just learning that I'm a stand-up.
Yeah.
And I've been doing stand-up before any
all
of
of it,
this stuff. And so then it's like teaching them that I do stand-up, and we're getting ready to record my special in December. And so it's like, then I'm going to put out a special.
Are you recording that back home?
Yeah, in Toronto. I'm going
Fuck
back to
yeah,
Toronto to
man.
record a
Everybody
special.
go get tickets.
Yeah, I get tickets for that, man. Yeah, it should be sick. Yeah.
Dude, that's awesome. So I wanted to ask you because you did bring a bunch of stories.
Yeah. Can I pee really quick?
Yeah, of course. Go ahead.
Yeah. Right before we get into this next.
Yeah. So the one story I did want to ask you about was the mind reader story because you had mentioned the long story earlier.
Yeah. So that was the same night.
It was?
It was the same night. So it starts off good. I'm doing. I have a new lungs,
lung,
new
kettlebells.
powers. Yeah. And so then I'm sitting on the couch, and my buddy is downstairs with his girlfriend, or my roommate, and they're talking. Well, he's also a buddy, but whatever. They're talking, and I think I'm hearing their thoughts. I think the noises I'm hearing aren't their voices. It's what's going on in their head. Because I'm so high.
Were you like, oh my God, I'm like a more powerful being now?
No, I'm panicking. I'm going insane. I'm drifting into like I'm gonna lose it. I'm so unbelievably paranoid, and now I'm convinced that then they start laughing, and I'm like, oh, they're laughing at my thoughts. They're like almost looking through my most embarrassing moments, like a filing cabinet, and looking at them and laughing. That's
Oh my God.
What else could be? Why else
There's
would they
no
be
other
laughing?
explanation.
There's no other explanation to this, of course. And so I'm losing it. I'm like fucking drifting and going. I'm so paranoid. I'm freaking out. And then I guess the point where I start to feel so insecure about everything I've done that I start deleting shit off of my Instagram. This is before I was like really popping, but I'm like, I probably had like 40K on Instagram.
That's a lot.
I just started deleting shit, but it was mostly just pictures. And
Yeah.
so I'm deleting, and because I'm like, oh, this is all stupid. This is all sucks. It's
my
not
God.
funny. This is shit. And so
This is what they're laughing at in a bad way. Yeah.
It's everything I've made sucks. And then I have like a Dave Chappelle thing where I start looking at flights to Africa. I remember looking at flights to Mozambique. I was like, I'm going to go to Mozambique because it was like, I need to.
Oh my God.
Because I was like, I need to work for like a non-for-profit. I need to dig wells. I need to provide something that is more meaningful to the world. Comedy's stupid. Comedy sucks. And honestly, I never 100% lost that. It still floats in my head sometimes where I go, yeah, no, this is, in terms of like what would actually be beneficial to the world, comedy ain't it. And that never it never went away.
You unlock that Pandora's box, and now
it's
just
like I still love comedy, and I strive for it, and every time I have a successful moment, I'm so grateful. But there's still something in my head that's like there's so much more, something so much better you could be doing, because there's also like the thought with it is like sometimes people are very successful and then they do something good. They're like, oh, I have all this money now I do something good, which is great, but the intention was never to do something good in the first place. The intention, it was to make a bunch of money or be famous or be a great stand-up, which is like a selfish pursuit, which is 99% of people are on a selfish pursuit.
Yeah.
Very few people are being selfless. And so going into something with like a selfless intention is like, I think, truly how you give back to the world. And that's kind of what opened, that never closed.
Yeah.
Because even if you are like taking care of your kids really well and you're like a good parent, which is like what you should be, and you go out of your way, it's like it's still selfish.
Yeah,
because these are
it's
your
still
kids. It makes you feel good.
And there's plenty of kids out there who don't have that.
Doing something for someone that you have no connection to, that you get nothing back from. Like sometimes there's people who like work in shelters and stuff, and they're helping a guy and he's like, fuck you, and he fucking screams and he freaks out, and you almost get shit on for trying to be a positive person. That's really selfless.
100%.
That is truly doing selfless work. And so that's in my head, and then I feel even shittier being like, I'm still doing the selfish pursuit. Even though most people do it, I'm still doing the selfish pursuit.
So that never left.
It never left.
Damn.
Yeah.
That's a heavy way to end it, dude.
Yeah.
Everybody, plug everything one more time. The special taping in December.
Yes, we're recording the special in December. It's in Toronto at Comedy Bar. Tickets, all the front row tickets are sold out. A lot of the VIP tickets are sold out. It should be a whole sold out weekend, which is great. Really good for the recording. What else?
Dark Holes
podcast. Dark Holes. Check me out on all streaming platforms for all things Che Durena. Go to chedurena.com. That's where all the tour dates are. And Che Durena on all other platforms. CHEDURENA.
Dude, thank you again for coming on.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you, everybody, so much for listening at Brennan T Comedy on all social media, BrennanTComedy.com. It's all the same, so sometimes I get so confused. Check out my one-man show, Ex-Drinking Buddy, a comics look at life, near-death, recovery, and redemption. And, we'll talk to y'all next week. Boom.
Right on, man.